Namibia needs me and Namibia needs you. Welcome to the podcast where we take the latest news and incorporate civic education and democratic principles into. Today, we are joined by a good friend of ours, Levi Katire. Levi is the director of Omaheke Radio and also happens to be the chairperson of the rising media giant, Media 264. Today, we'll have very interesting discussions with Levi, looking at anti corruption and its prevailing effects, and of course, also looking at mis and disinformation for the recently concluded elections. Let's get into it.
So, as a country, we're busy looking at just a lot of arrests being made by the ACC in the last few weeks. 2 weeks? It's been a short period. It's been a lot of arrests. I don't remember this intensity of arrests being made by the ACC since its inception. Do any of you?
Yeah, actually not. And it's very surprising because then you actually wonder like what was happening the whole time? Where was ACC the whole time?
What is it about the intensity of this moment? What is happening? What is your diagnosis?
So, just in terms of how I'm seeing it, a lot of these arrests are particularly at the regional and local authority level. Some former councillors, some former mayors, even in some instances where they were in cahoots, well, allegedly in cahoots with ministry officials. For me, it's particularly very shocking that most of these arrests are for individuals that are at regional and local authority level. How there's either abuse of power, using the office for self gratification, fraud, theft under false pretense. So it is very shocking. We see at these levels how a lot of funds are being misappropriated, positions are being used for self.
Okay, wait, you're using the word shocking there. Are you shocked that there is a lot of corruption in the country?
No, I'm not shocked of that premise. I'm just shocked that it is so prevailing. It's just so quiet until now.
Okay, so that's the question that you were asking, Levi. And just for anyone who's perhaps not in the know, what is the ACC? And that question that you had, this begs the question, what's been happening until now? What's your answer for that?
Yeah, I mean the ACC Anti-Corruption Commission, to say it in full, I mean it's a government established institution or entity that actually is responsible for capping or prosecuting corruption in the country
And
it
investigating, right?
and investigating as well. It has been in existence for quite a long time. I mean, you said to look it up. I'm not exactly sure when it started, but if you think of it, it's as if it was a dog under a tree, and then now all of a sudden it's taking care of its whole yard, you know.
Yeah.
Especially having to make so many arrests over this period of time. We don't know whether it has to do with the government of the day, whether it's because of the president's intent and call to action about corruption, or whether the previous leadership had some sort of oversight on anti-corruption, so much that it couldn't probably function properly. This is a body that is actually supposed to ensure that our resources are protected at any level of governance, central government up to local authority, up to institutions that are created by government for the people. And when you see leaders actually contravening, especially the most of the sections that actually, I mean, Genola made mention of it, section 35, section 43, and section 46 as I was reading, that has to do with gratification, that has to do with falsifying of documents. And so it means these are actually actions with serious intent.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
And okay, so that question that you're asking, you're still asking it, but you're not really answering it. But there are certain reasons why the ACC can make arrests in 2025 for things that happened like in 2017. And these are multiple. It's got to do with stuff like the Attorney General only audits certain documents or certain years well after the year. You know, there's a year's delay before investigations even can begin because the information's only come to the surface years after the fact, or because during not necessarily a national administration but a local regional level, when power changes or a new system comes into effect, old misuse of power emerges well after the fact. Again, the investigation only starts well after the fact. And then when it comes to high profile things like this that can be accused of being political, the ACC really does take its time to build up evidence because it doesn't want to be falsely accused of having any type of ulterior motive.
Especially around this time when it's so sensitive, nearer to the election.
Interesting that's a whole other element, right? Yeah. So there are all these different reasons. I mean, for example, we were talking about this earlier. When a whistleblower comes out and says, there's something fishy there might not be any evidence of that alleged event, but trying to uncover that might surface evidence of other events of corruption.
If you look at an arrest, or if you read about an arrest that happens today, but it's activities of 2015.
Yeah, that's the last.
That's a long time.
Yeah.
And does it mean it really takes that long for investigations to go on, for the Attorney
Yeah,
General
there
to
are all
actually?
these reasons. Like, for example, the ACC is an extremely cool body the fact that it exists. There are people dedicated to doing only this, but it's not extremely well funded.
So does that mean you implying that ACC actually needs a lot of more funding from government?
I mean, in our scarce resources in this economy, there are so many things that need more funding. So for me to say the ACC is the one, I was at a panel discussion yesterday where we were talking about policy design and policy implementation. And a lot of this actually surfaces and shows gaps in our policy, places where corruption is possible. So there's legislative things that we can do to make corruption far more difficult. The Procurement Act being a great example has lots of red flags and black holes and areas where that make corruption easy. So, changing that legislation is perhaps a more cost-effective way of having a bigger impact.
Maybe if I can add a bit there on the matter of policy, is that I also attended once a workshop on human rights. And one of the speakers there also literally made a reference to 2015, where the procurement board was started, and how the board was made up of 16 individuals, of which 15 were women and only one guy, and all of the people, all 16 of them were from one particular tribe. Now you think about it. Where is their affirmative repositioning? Where is their tribal arithmetic? You see, where is their full representation? So, like the speaker used that as an example to show that sometimes there is lack of this kind of policy that allows for these things to prevail. Because all they will say is that no, there is nothing that we chose these people based on their merit. But merit sometimes alone is not enough. You have to do it in such a way that people feel represented, especially by an organization of such repute. So it's very important that a lot of policies established that avoid situations like that, because we are already in a country where people sometimes feel like, oh, there's less development here because I'm so tribe, or there's more development here because they're so tribe. So to avoid those things, when you're establishing a new organization, always ensure that there's that balance. Still merit, still people that qualify, still people that, but they must be merit, not because you want to push an agenda, but because people need to feel represented.
Chinola, Levi was saying earlier, this has got a lot to do with resources that, are being taken away from other things. Corruption can feel so embedded in our culture. And maybe it's because we kind of all think, life's tough and get somewhere you can. My ears are prickling about you saying that they were all women and only one man, and how that is not, affirmative action orientated. I think in a country where we've got so much gender inequality, and so many spaces in which so many men are represented, it's not anti-affirmative action for a room full of women to be making any decisions. Once we reach anything approximating gender equality, we can talk about that being unfair or harmful towards anyone. But I don't think that that's the case exactly. But
My feeling is that yes, it is true. We do have those social challenges existing, but we should often look for a balance. So whether it's male or female, there shouldn't be any prejudice. That is my feeling. So we must always look for the place of balance. But now to answer the question in terms of the very dire, very deep effects of corruption, is that maybe let me paint a picture. Like for instance, with a particular instance where Ministry of Works and Transport Workers and particular equipment was purchased, and this equipment ought to have been used for the construction of roads for for the ministry now. And what happened was these guys issued a tender to each other and then signed off that the equipment was received while it actually was not. What that inversely does is that they will now there's a lot of potholes on the road, there's a lot of challenges with the road, and things that could lead to accidents. And you wonder, oh, why are there so many accidents? It's because sometimes, in some cases, but not always, the roads are not proper. Why? Because of ministry officials that are responsible for fixing those potholes, fixing those curves, putting those little, what do you call those little lights that are in the center of the road that help drivers see, stay in your lane? Those things were not done. So people really don't see that corruption, what it actually ultimately does is that it affects the community you come from. Now you are enriched, you are sitting with the money. But now there could be accidents. Or even in some cases where money was misappropriated at a regional council, money that ought to have gone to the development of schools and parks and recreational activities for the youth, is that you taking that money has now denied the next generation maybe a proper school, maybe textbooks, maybe better infrastructure, maybe the renovation of a netball field or a soccer field, through which maybe the next Messi could come from in our society. But people don't see corruption's effects that deep, that it actually trickles down to that far.
They
Yeah.
do. I
Yeah.
mean, what do you think, Levi? I think people are extremely disillusioned, and if you take joblessness and poverty and inequality and you throw in a pervasive, like corruption, sense that there's a lot of corruption, it really like robs you of trust in your institutions. You're sitting with very disillusioned youth, and I think that's what we're seeing.
Yeah, no, very much. I mean, corruption really, really deprives the community and people of a nation to a great extent. Like, for example, I mean, I'm from Omaheke, and Omaheke Regional Council, I mean, I'll be point blank. Omaheke Regional Council have also been at some point, the Auditor General's report have indicated that money has been allocated and released to the Regional Council for housing schemes and so on. But this money is actually kept within the coffers of the regional council for years. And there is just delays and what by the municipalities and so on in terms of the allocation of the land for this housing scheme and so on. But what happens at the end of the day? This money actually accumulates interest, but the interest is actually not returned to the state. You know what I'm saying? So where is that money? So not only does it actually deprive the community of housing as well, but there is that corrupt activity that's happening right there. At the end of the day, people are suffering. People don't have access to housing. Roads are dilapidated. And infrastructure is actually not maintained just because of certain individuals who are actually gratifying themselves, you know. So, and this is happening everywhere. Even though Anti-Corruption Commission, actually, the Anti-Corruption Commission of Namibia is actually one of the highly rated in Africa. But not to say that, not to say that it's
They're
doing.
100%, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. It's always also to do with our population is so small to actually have this high level of corruption and also lack of access to or resources, and also communities being deprived of certain services and so on. But government is actually doing its best to actually allocate funds, to actually source funds to be able to carry out this. But individuals within those institutions are actually the ones who are taking it upon themselves to
do
actually
these things.
to
Ma-
do these things, you
I
know.
think seeing how ACC has now suddenly turned a new leaf, I think that is absolutely good. And even for us as citizens, or maybe those that are in government, in ministries, in these organizations, they have now risen. So you should also be careful. You shouldn't engage in activities that you know could otherwise disadvantage your organization and ultimately society, but even more importantly, you as a person. Because now your ability to get a job is more difficult. You will have a record. You will go through years of a criminal case, and those things are really not comfortable. I promise you, it's not worth it. At the end of the day, it will not be worth it. So it's very important. ACC has now turned a new leaf, and their eagle eyes are now much more sharper. So it's important for us, even as citizens, to be law abiding.
So, at the time of this interview, we're heading to the polls tomorrow for our local authority and regional council elections. By the time this podcast comes out, we'll probably be getting results back. What are the messages we want to send out about, just not in this time being so susceptible to misinformation and disinformation going around?
What I do know, which is common, like before every announcement of results period. So the period when the Voting stations closed at 9 o'clock that evening to before the commission announces the official candidates per constituency. Because this time around, we don't need to come to Windhoek to hear the results for the president and the National Assembly. No, each announcement will be made at the particular polling station, and then ultimately there will be a collective counting where they will release now the preliminary results, and then some months later the final results. So during that 1 day period where the commission has not announced the results, what often happens is that a lot of times there are these, what the presiding officer feels in this particular form with the total number of votes. A lot of those circulate. Some will be real, some will not be. And that is why it's important for us as citizens to please follow the trusted media houses, and of course only the trusted social media pages and websites of the media houses like the Namibian, like the NBC, like Namibia Needs Me, like the NID, because these institutions will not put false information out there because they would have done the due diligence to verify for you first.
I mean, when you're on social media, you have to, just like you said, Janola, you have to follow and verify from credible sources of information. If you see if you see a JPEG file that's circulated on WhatsApp, or a PDF file that's circulated, it's most likely to have been edited. So what you have to do before you even share it with anybody else, look up for the Namibian Facebook or the whatever, Namibian Sun, or New Era, whatever, and then just do the comparison. And this is just a simple way of verifying information.
So well said. Thanks, Levi.
Wow, what a great discussion we've had with Levi. But before I say anything else, I just want to thank you so much for as many of you that have participated in the just concluded regional and local authority elections. You are a true active citizen, and truly Namibia does need you. But of course, if you're out there and you want to learn more on civic education and democratic principles, visit Namibia Needs Me on LinkedIn, Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, and of course, our very, very valuable Namibia Needs Me website. Cheers.